Hey, everybody. Good morning here on this Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. It is the Dev Talk Show here with my co-host, Rich Ross. How's it going,
Morning.
Rich?
Going well, Chris. Going well. Good. Kind of the end of the week for me because I'm off tomorrow and Friday. So this is
Oh, that's awesome.
it's kind of a funny feeling. It feels a little like a Friday for me, but all
I think
good.
it's awesome that you have the rest of the week off. That's great. how do I get that deal? Oh, I know how you gotta prepare for it and ask ahead of time, I suppose. So yeah, just making sure that we appear to now be live all on Twitch, YouTube, and even Twitter. There is a LinkedIn page, which I suppose if we were really on the ball, and we can do. In fact, while we're sitting here, I will get it linked up. There is a page for the Dev Talk Show on LinkedIn, and the reason that I am bringing this up is because there must be a better link than this, but this is what I'm going to go with. Let me just double check that this actually takes it there. Is if we can get 150 followers on LinkedIn, we will be able to stream there.
Yeah.
So that would be pretty cool. It's interesting. For some reason, I feel like, is this really the link? Is this really the best link? I'm going to paste it into the chat.
Okay.
And not that this helps anybody to see it up on screen, but I look at that and I go, is this really the best link? I think there must be a way to say, I think there is a more vanity type link. And as you can see, I'm new to hosting a LinkedIn page. So I just didn't know what it was.
Yeah. So. Having trouble because I have multiple browsers over here. I need to open in the right one so it gets my credentials on there. But there we go.
Yeah.
What? Yes.
In any case, the point is and see, that says like admin feed, so that can't be right. I don't believe it anymore. Yeah. I don't believe that that's really the link.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, that's how new I am to being a LinkedIn page admin. I can't believe that that's really it. I wonder if it's like just, oh, you know what it is? Look at this. I think I figured it out. I'm going to take this and open it in private window just to make sure. But yeah, okay. So let's try that again. Let's paste into the chat. Nope, not that one. Join us on LinkedIn. And this should look more like it. Join us on LinkedIn. All right. So why LinkedIn? Because if you join us on LinkedIn, we get 150 followers and we will stream there as well. I think LinkedIn's a great platform for developer streams. There's a lot of developer community there. And, Twitch is a great live streaming platform. And then YouTube, of course, I think is like where the world records everything. So having those are good. And we'll go from there.
Yeah. And then, of course, yeah, well, Twitter X as a platform.
Yeah. I mean, when Prince changed his name to a symbol, it was brilliant because he had lost his own copyright control or something like that over his own branded image. And what was brilliant about changing it to something totally unpronounceable is that I don't know if his publicity team or whatever got it out there, but what did everyone call him for decades or however long this was the artist formerly known as Prince. So he got to have everyone else say the name that he couldn't say. I don't know that was the strategy here, but I see on every post now, every news item, the platform formerly known as Twitter. And
wow.
I see that a lot. I see it in the news a lot now. I really do. I'm reading a blog post or I'm reading a news article like from the Associated Press, and it'll say so-and-so, and it doesn't have to be anybody from Twitter. It could just be especially it's political seasons kind of ramping up in the US or around the world, whatever. And it'll say so-and-so said on X, and then parentheses, the platform formerly known as Twitter. And I say, I don't know that was the same goal as what Prince was doing, which was absolute marketing brilliance to keep using his stage name without using his stage name until he finally got it back. So, you know,
and I'm trying to see where I saw it, because I think for the first time I saw it on a web page where it had the X logo instead of the bird.
Yeah, I see it now. If you embed tweets, it shows the little X logo. The little fav icon is the X logo. And I will tell you right now that every time I go to my browser and I start typing, I type like TWIT and then I hit tab and I go to twitter.com and it works. And so I don't know.
And maybe we can use this as a segue, but where I saw it was on the .NET page, where you get the preview version of .NET, or the RC version. Sorry.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? It's almost like we know what we're doing. That is a heck of a segue, because that's what we're here to talk about. We are here to discuss .NET 8 RC1, which dropped yesterday, September 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think even dropped during ASP.NET Community Stand-Up, I think. The only reason I say that is there were some people in chat saying, like, where's the blog post? Where's the blog post? And then I think John Galloway typed in there, like, there it is, or going up now, or any second. And then people started saying, like, there it is. So I think it dropped right during the community stand-up, which was a good one.
Marketing team's on the ball. There you go.
Definitely one you want to watch. I think if you're interested in what we're talking about here, is you want to check out the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up yesterday, specifically because it was Dan Roth on the show talking about, I think, really just ASP.NET Core 8 and where you're at in .NET 8 RC1. We have so many acronyms to plow through here. But let's see. It's funny, as I'm looking for it, what channel was it on? Because now I wanted to find it and post up a link.
Hang on. I can look for that because it is in my feed. Let's see. Come on.
Yeah, I actually just found it. It is in .NET. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it on the screen here. And there's Dan. There's Dan talking with John. And McKinnon, who is new to me, but apparently was here, works on the ASP.NET team, from what I can imagine, because they talked about how the auto rendering, I believe I'm correct that what Dan had said is the auto selection feature between where it selects server or WebAssembly is his feature. And boy, wouldn't that be something to be able to say, like, oh yeah, that's my feature on the ASP.NET. Like, wow. So yeah, lots of talk in this show. You should definitely check it out. We'll get some links for you to make sure that you can do that.
And just have I frozen? Because
no, I don't think so. Anyways.
Okay. Everything else on my machine has frozen, so that's why I'm just curious if
No,
right.
No, you're still moving on the screen here. So what you can't see is that I switched back to the blog post announcing .NET 8 RC1. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't.
Not yet. But I'm working on it. Don't worry.
Yeah. We know that .NET Conf is coming November 14th through the 16th. And I'm just going to let her word speak for itself. Join us November 14th through 16th, 2023, to celebrate the .NET 8 release. And the reason I say things like that is because let's not forget, those of you watching, you may or may not realize, like, I, for example, am Microsoft MVP, which means I do not work for Microsoft. It just means that I've been fortunate enough to be recognized by Microsoft for work in the community. And then, Rich, we certainly don't want it to be misunderstood that you work on this team or
right. That I don't work on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, because some of the stuff that we talked about last show, which was only 2 days ago, as we see through here, some of that has changed a little bit. I had no idea that was coming. So
yeah. So it's important that although you work for Microsoft, it's key to note that Leslie works on the team, and a lot of the people we talk about work on the ASP.NET team or the .NET teams, but we don't. And so it's news to us too when things change. And what's really interesting here is we've got the ASP.NET Core updates in .NET 8 release candidate 1 by Dan Roth, who has been a huge part of Blazor from the inception. It's always been great. I think his excitement around Blazor is always really, really cool. So some interesting things here, I think. Quite often the pattern that I've seen the team fall into is when there is a new .NET 8 preview or even a version. Maybe not necessarily once it's live, not so much, but Visual Studio tooling gets an update as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so my understanding is this is no exception. I believe it says here, we recommend using the latest Visual Studio 2022 preview, and we will get a much better look at that in a second. For example, if I go ahead and I'm on the blog post from Dan Roth, ASP.NET Core updates in .NET 8 release candidate 1, where it says to get started with ASP.NET Core in .NET 8 RC1, install the .NET 8 SDK. If I click here, we're going to end up on what I guess you can kind of call the .NET Next site. This link here, you can actually shorten to just .NET/next, and you end up back here. And when you end up here, we are going to, oh, this is like the smallest thing in the world. I'm going to zoom in, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. All .NET 8 downloads is where I want to go to show you all this. If I click all .NET 8 downloads, this is the page I kind of want to see. It's sort of the matrix table of all the versions, right? All the previews. And most importantly, it is telling you that for Visual Studio, they would like to see you on Visual Studio 2022 v17.8's latest preview, which I believe is 17.8.2 or something like that. And that hasn't dropped for me in my Visual Studio installer. So that's okay, because I think what we'll do instead is I think we'll install it on command line with winget and use Visual Studio Code and see how that goes.
Nice.
So in order to do that, I'm going to hit the start button. I tend to just type WT for the terminal, and then I, by reflex, almost always hit Control-Shift-Enter. And what that does is it gets me a administrator terminal without really much fanfare, I guess. Kind of nice. This is my terminal courtesy of Oh My Posh, which I think has an upgrade for me. We'll do that another time. So let's see. I'm pretty sure that if I say winget, well, let's do winget list. In fact, I think that might be it right there. Winget list id.net. This is showing me the items on my system that have .NET in their ID. So that happened to also gather in paint.net, which I love, and these other SDKs. So let's go ahead and say, so if you have never done this before, once again, I'm at the .NET vNext site, which you can reach at, the .NET vNext site is at .NET/next. .NET is the home of .NET. I always remember that. But I actually was just kind of made aware that you can also go to .NET vNext that way. Okay. So here we are. Winget instructions. I'm gonna like to try that out. Let's zoom in a little bit. Zoom in even more. I'm going to do winget instructions, and the winget instructions just simply say, oh, that's interesting that I got documentation for .NET 7. Because I wonder if we can use winget to get the, to figure out the exact string that I want.
If you do a winget search for .NET, then you'll see all of the potential winget packages.
Plus, we got a little bit more here. So what I'm going to do is here's .NET Framework. So what does .NET Framework look like? Let's make this bigger. I'm going to run that again. I think So this is let's cut it down here and see, is this going to help us? Or no, actually maybe not. This is probably good.
Well, that's you don't want the runtime, right? I mean, you probably want the
SDK. Don't. Yeah. But I just kind of wanted to see. I wanted to narrow it down. I didn't really want some of these other things in here that happen to have .NET in the name.
Makes sense.
Or maybe just got picked up anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. Microsoft .NET 8 Runtime 8.0 preview and showing this version. Okay, so perfect. I wonder if I could have just simply upgraded here, but that's all right. I think.
What I didn't see it already existing. Like you didn't have a previous 8.0. You had 7.0. So I think upgrading probably wouldn't work. Although I could be wrong about that. Because it does, when you look at the 7 there, it says you've got 7, but there's an available 8.
That's interesting. I wonder, really? .NET list SDKs?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I remember now. That preview, the previous preview, was not installed with WinGet, and the reason why is because I did a Visual Studio upgrade.
Oh, sure.
And the Visual Studio preview upgrades go ahead and install it, so I haven't used WinGet to get it yet. So that makes sense.
Yep, totally does.
So I should be able to say WinGet install. And what do you think is the best choice here? Just this right here?
Probably the first one, right? Well, do you want the SDK?
Oh, you're right.
Be able to build from it.
I keep skipping past the thing I really want. So this is this is for folks who maybe you're on Linux, maybe you're on Mac. Well, I guess you wouldn't use WinGet on either of those, but maybe you just don't want to use Visual Studio. That's fine. This is the way to get the preview down. And look, it's just doing the thing, which is kind of nice. We do like to have shows where we install this stuff on Linux from the jump and play in there, which I thought about doing. I said, like, well, since I can't install the latest Visual Studio for whatever reason, maybe try doing a Linux one today. But that's okay. This is good. This shouldn't take too long.
No, it's pretty quick.
Thanks for hanging in there with us. If you haven't liked and subscribed on YouTube, please do so. If you have any questions or comments or want to share your experience, anything that you want to talk about, let us know in the comments. It definitely helps the channel. You know, tell your friends if you're enjoying the content here. So here we go, successfully installed. And now I'm going to run that same .NET list SDKs. And there it is, 8.0 RC1. That looks good to me. That's a good start.
Yep.
So now, clear the screen. Let's go ahead and say .NET new help, which I believe is going to do a couple things. First, we're going to get the welcome to .NET 8, because I'm pretty sure this is the first time we've run .NET with this SDK. And they're basically just saying, hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. And we are going to .NET new, and we want to know the name. If I say .NET new list, do I get all the templates? Okay, good. I'm going to back it off a little bit and run it again. So in Blazor, we now have this set of templates here. There may be more that are relevant. I don't want to make it sound like these are the only templates you should care about, but we still have templates for Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly, and that is the .NET 7 and previous style, where you make a selection for your model and that's it. You know, that's kind of how it's going to go. But the idea in .NET 8 is that Blazor is just Blazor. You don't have to make that decision anymore. At least you don't have to make it when you're creating the project. So now you just want Blazor. That's what I'm getting right here. Is I just want to say .NET new Blazor, and I will get a Blazor web app. Now, if you watch the ASP.NET community stand-up from yesterday, you're going to see that in Visual Studio, you get a bunch of options and checkboxes, and I think those are available to us, right?
They will be when we get in Visual Studio on the preview side. I think if you do .NET new Blazor -- help,
yeah,
we should be able to see some of those options come through.
Yeah, and in fact, so I've done that. .NET New Blazor -- help, and it's saying this is a Blazor web app. This is a project template for creating a Blazor web app that supports server-side rendering and client interactivity. Those are just fancy terms for how Blazor is by default now rendering server side, but then you have your components declare, or your pages or your app declare that, hey, for the back and forth, you either use the WASM model or the server model. And yes, there are some template options here. For example, -UW for use WASM, -US for use server. This is server is true by default, and WASM is false by default. And I think that tracks with the checkbox defaults too.
Right. Because in the Visual Studio screen, if you go and look at it, when you see that there, you get individual checkboxes for each of those. So you could check both.
Yes,
and
yes,
there's a conversation to have around that as well. I think the other thing that's pretty cool that is new to the checkboxes is the dash empty. So basically having, instead of having a separate project that was an empty web project, because we used to have that, this is, the same Blazor setup, but without all of the control, the web, the weather page, those kind of things in there for you.
Right. Look at this.
There you go.
I think I found it. Maybe if I can get it to play. Okay. So this was the experience that was shown in the community stand-up. And what we're really doing here is we're showing you that you have this experience, except that you have it at command line.
Yep. Which is really important, right? Because the whole purpose of this is, yes, if you got Visual Studio, awesome, it works inside of there. But oftentimes, more and more people, especially with the C# Dev Kit in there, they're starting to move towards VS Code. This gives them that flexibility to have the same bit of control over the project new, just like they do in Visual Studio.
Yep. And I think, there are some folks out there who say, hey, we're building and deploying to Linux, so I want to develop in Linux. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. In fact, that's one of my favorite things to do, is to bring all this stuff up in Linux. And I mean, me. In fact, I can't wait to show you a future on .NET that's coming, that's right up my alley, because I've been wanting to bring it to the show. So in any case, we can see that everything matches. Configure for HTTPS is right here. No HTTPS if you want. Using WASM is here. Using server is here. And then it's just called empty for include sample pages, or even one further, if you don't like top level statements, and I am a fan, but if you don't like them, then you've got use program main. So the options match, which is pretty nice. I like that. Let's see. What do I have? Blazor. I do have Blazor 8. So we're going to call this, we're going to say .NET New Blazor. And we're going to say that this is Blazor 8 RC1. And that'll be the name of the project. But now what do we want here? We want, we could go with the defaults, which the defaults are basically going to be use server is checked. We'll get some sample pages, which isn't so bad for us right now. We can take those out when we start working on the DevTalkShow website. No HTTPS. I personally like to leave HTTPS on. I understand that in certain organizations that can be problematic. I actually worked in one for a little while where that was a problem, but I kind of like to have that on at the beginning just so I don't forget it later. And I like top level statements. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just stick with the defaults. But it is important to note that as I'm creating this, I could have done something like, use WASM or something like that. So let's go ahead and create this. And that was it. That was like the easiest thing ever. So let's go to it. CD Blazor 8. That's really not the one I wanted. CD Blazor. I'm going to hit tab a couple times there it is, to get to the one I wanted. And then we'll do a code dot and let this fire up in Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code has popped up, and I was half expecting it to ask me, I think it's already done a .NET restore, I believe. I could be wrong, but I think it has. So it didn't ask me that question where it says like, hey, do you want to restore your project? And that's it. Now, I'm not 100% sure here. It didn't seem to create a solution. Oh, that's right. I didn't pick the Blazor. So maybe we will make one with the Blazor WebAssembly in a second, just to take a look at what's different.
Right.
I zoom in a little bit, we can see what the project looks like. There has been some changes. I said that top level statements were fine with me, so I have a program CS that's very small, and we know that this is really a program class and whatever, but I kind of like this, and it's pretty straightforward. I think what really drives this and makes it go is if you want a fully server-side rendered app, you would just have this. It's this particular bit that adds in the support for Blazor server, and at least that's what we discovered when we were playing with it previously, and then add server render mode here. So, I mean, you can take this stuff out if you don't want it. Now, I suppose we could just do another file new project to prove it to ourselves too. Let's see. Another thing that's interesting is if you remember previous Blazor apps, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up in Visual Studio the app that we were working in. That way I can show this real quick. There's been some movement in the template in terms of where things are being put just as a launching point. And this is movement since the last preview, and maybe even kind of since, you know, how Blazor has worked for a while. So this is the application we created last time on the show using Blazor 8's the final preview. And you can see that there was a pages folder and a shared folder that we went through and got things set up. Now we have a components folder, and the layout has been moved here in components. So what these things used to be in shared, and the individual pages are now under components in the components folder. So they've been moved. We still have the global imports and app, and then we have a routes.razor. So this is a little bit of a change too. There is a router component that is has been created to kind of, this component is able to handle the routing for both the server-side rendering support and the client interactivity support. So we were modifying a different, there was a different router that was being used. Well, it's not that it was different. It's that the router was sitting in the app.razor. So in fact, I'm going to go ahead and bring that back over. So this just for everybody to make sure everyone understands, I am now looking at the last preview and how the project was set up. This is not how it's set up right now. Is here in app.razor, we had the router was embedded in here in the body section.
Okay.
And then in order for us to add a new page, we were coming into nav menu, and we added our controls page. And what I mean by adding the page, we weren't really adding the page. We were saying we want the navigation to work.
Right.
But nav menu was sitting in shared. And then this was our new page, and we just added it. They already had pages sitting in counter, index, weather. I think what a lot of people were doing is, because a Razor component can be your whole page. In fact, that's often how we start, is we start by just building a page. And then it becomes useful to start separating components that you reuse. And so it's very common. I think people just end up creating a components folder anyway.
So let me unpack that a little bit. So if you're saying what we're looking at here is that counter control.
Yeah.
And while we could certainly bring that counter control into the index.razor page, right, just by making that reference, but I could also call it directly because of that page attribute at the top. But if I got rid of that, the only way to bring it in there is by referencing it as a control, essentially.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So again, we're looking at the previous release just to see what's changed. Now, if we take a look just a little bit on the right, pages has been moved under components. What was previously in shared is now called layout, and it's under components. And then routes has kind of been pulled out. And so I think what we're going to notice is when we look at the app.razor of old, the router is in here. I have a feeling now when we come and look at app.razor, we're going to see that the routes component is being pulled in, and you're going to find it here.
Oh, just a reference to routes. Interesting.
Yeah, it's just a reference to it. So you don't have to come in here and make changes to this when you get started, because what this component's doing is it's turning around and looking up your main layout, which is what they give you. They hand you a main layout component. They're looking that up to figure out the navigation data. And they also have some JavaScript. Well, not JavaScript. They have a plan for whether they find the route, they find this component, and then can therefore lay out the different routes, or whether they can't find it. And what's interesting is in the new preview, they've taken out filling this out. You know, and I think it's because partially it's because they were finding that, generally speaking, I don't think people get this wrong. You would discover it very quickly if you got it wrong. So maybe they just felt like, what's the point? You know, why do we have this in the template? Maybe just to confuse people. I'm going to go ahead and try to run this and see. I don't have extension for debugging Razor. Is that really true? I thought I have. Let me make sure that the C# dev kit is activated. Oh, that's interesting. I was pretty sure that I had the C# dev kit not only installed, but... Oh, okay. That's interesting that it's complaining about an extension that is disabled. But it's possible that it's... Let's see. Okay, yeah. Copilot will not show. Okay, fine. Sign in. Maybe this could be the issue.
Right.
So it's asking me to sign in off screen, which is fine. Unfortunately, it didn't pick the browser window that I would have liked it to. So let me sign in to C# dev kit real quick. Sorry that this is all happening off screen. Of course, if I could only get a browser window, wouldn't that be something? Okay. Okay, it says I'm now signed in. Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And let's get this back up. And prefer runtime considered. Wow, look at this. It's asking me a lot of stuff. These are things I'm learning here. So the C# dev kit said, consider turning on prefer runtime from SDK. Controls where the extension tries to use runtime. When you use a preview version, that may help. But however, the extension could blow up, I suppose. So, you know, we'll go with that. That's okay. We're learning here. That's what we're doing. And actually, we did see some stuff light up now. Remember, this was all red before.
Oh, yeah.
So, so that's cool. Just signing into the dev kit lit up. Everything's lighting up as I click into pages. So, okay, nice. Now let's try running it. Is it running? I can't tell.
I think it's thinking.
I thought it was, and then I feel like it didn't. Well, for one thing, I probably need a launch JSON file. Okay, now that I've done that, now I think we're good. I think this would be really nice if this just worked. So what are the things I had to overcome here? On Visual Studio Code, I did install C# dev kit, which does require a Visual Studio subscription, and I logged into that. I don't know that would have been required to do this, though. I'm just not sure. We could probably turn off we can use the part of the dev kit of the model that doesn't require that. And then I had a little bit of a bumpy road there where it suggested that I change a setting in Visual Studio, and I didn't follow this menus correctly to create a launch.json, which is what this has done for me. It's created this launch.json that launches the app. And that's all good news because here it is. So that did work. And we've got our counter that works and our weather, and this is great. Let's see if I can just set a breakpoint so we can watch this stuff go. Whenever somebody clicks the counter button, let's see, click, and sure enough, breakpoint hits. So here we are in Visual Studio Code getting the behavior that we want.
Yeah.
So that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. That's a good start.
Yeah.
All right. Let's close this. And then, unlike Visual Studio, I have noticed that when I close the web page in Visual Studio, that seems to kick, like Kestrel understands or something understands that you're not using it anymore, and it ends the debugging session.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I think I could just reopen the page, but instead I'm going to hit stop and we'll end our debugging session.
Okay.
And here we are. So what questions do you have after looking at this, at just this quick view of the differences between the RC1 version of this and what we just worked with on Tuesday?
Monday.
Monday. Yeah.
It does seem it was not that long ago. It's hey, morning, Chops. That's a good question. So yeah, because I mean, there's little things that certainly have changed in the RC1, but they don't. At least for some of the stuff I'm doing, they don't seem to be breaking kind of changes or anything we've talked about so far, which is great. That's what you kind of hope for as you move along. I think what might be interesting, just from what we know happens in Visual Studio, is if we created another project that had both the WASM and the Blazor enabled, right? Because one's enabled by default and the other is not enabled by default.
Right.
Maybe put those settings in, because I think it's a good. It'll be interesting to see how Visual Studio Code reacts to that.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So let's go ahead and close this. We don't need that. And again, what we're talking about here is, if you've joined us late, is that in Visual Studio you get this checkbox experience, but all these checkboxes are available from the command line. You just got to know the switches. So and the switches are, it's not like it's a pop quiz. We can look them up. So I'm back here at command line, and once again we're going to say .NET new Blazor help, just so we can see the different switches. And this time we will create an app and we'll call it Blazor 8 RC1. Let's see. This is going to be a nice long name, full interactivity. Just because we're going to have both.
Right.
We know that use server is on by default, so this is a little superfluous, but I'm going to do it anyway. I put in use server. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn on use WASM. Whoops. So for folks that maybe can't see the command line here, it's a little light. I love oh my posh, and I love that I have that cool background, but I understand somebody watching might say like, oh, I can't read the gray text. Fair enough. So, I got some things to think about. The rest, I think I want to leave alone. I definitely want HTTPS. I still like top level statements. That hasn't changed. And we're not going to say empty. We'll go ahead and leave the sample pages just so something works out of the box. We could look at the empty project too.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. It automatically does a .NET restore. There is a way to turn that off, I noticed. Skips automatic restore with a -- no restore.
Oh,
take that, Visual Studio, because that's not in there. All right, so we're going to switch to Blazor RC1 full interactivity, the longest name yet, and we'll open that up in Visual Studio Code. And I think our experience here will be a lot less bumpy now because, well, let's find out. Let's see if those extensions fired up. It's interesting. I wonder if I've done something that it doesn't fire up globally, or it just seems it's like, well, oh, and then I could say switch to pre-release version too. But in any case, it wants to create it. Yeah, there's probably something I could do differently. I could switch to pre-release, or for whatever reason, it's popping up and saying like, oh, you've got to enable me, which I've done, and that seems to work. That seems to work fine. And then in order to actually run this, I've got to create a launch.json, which I always forget about. So when I click on the little run and debug tab, and it's saying to me like, well, what do you want to run? First, you need a launch JSON, and it's smart enough to go, well, what do you want? And I want the .NET 5 Plus and .NET Core debugger. And oh, now which project do you want to launch? And that's what we're going to see in just a second. I believe I want to launch this one. I spelled this wrong, by the way. But let's go take a look at the file explorer. That was what was important here. And we have 2 projects in a solution. We have what we saw before, our Blazor application that now is both pointing at, it's both using add server components and add WebAssembly components, and it's also using add server render mode and add WebAssembly render mode. It's using both. What else is going on here? We still have this same layout that we just talked about, but we also have this client project.
Right.
The C# extension is going nuts, and so is the IntelliCode extension. So what's happened is, and this is definitely discussed in the stand-up, is that just on Monday, we were combining WebAssembly with server all in the project, all together. And it sounds to me, and I don't necessarily want to speak for Dan, so the best case scenario is to go watch what he said. What I heard him say, though, was that when you use Blazor WebAssembly, you have to remember the code you write in WebAssembly components is going to the browser in the form of a .NET DLL.
Yep, coming down to your machine.
Yeah, it's coming to the client's machine, to your user's machine. And now this is no different from a full-blown client-side only SPA that has to make careful coding choices about what is going to be exposed to anyone who wants to look at it and what somehow needs to remain server-side.
Right.
And I think what they found is that they were having trouble keeping, as a developer, reasoning about that line between what's server side, what's client side, and decided that, well, what we're going to do, at least for .NET 8, maybe longer, we don't know, is take the client work and put it in its own project in the same solution. That way, it's crystal clear that the code you're writing here is going client side down to the client, and that if you've got something really super important like a database, maybe an algorithm, something that's your business value, that you don't put that in here. You don't put it in this client project. That might not be the only thing, but that's one thing I got out of it.
Yep. Yeah, that's I took that away. I had that takeaway as well, right? The idea of being selective with, I mean, because, it's coming down to the machine running in the context of the browser, but, there, you might want to, for bandwidth issues or things of that nature, certainly to be aware of not pushing things that don't need to be there.
When I watched that, I mean, let's see if this runs, first of all. I feel like I just want to run it. So launch and debug. I think I picked the right one there. We'll find out. Definitely a browser window's fired up. I'd love for this to just fire up and go. And there we go. Look at that. So that's cool. Let's see. I can click the infamous counter. It's not clicking though. And this is part of where I kind of dropped off in the I dropped off. Oh, wait, actually, that did start working. Oh, look at that. That was interesting. Let me refresh it. And okay, so that is working. this is a streaming rendering demonstration. This is not actually a interactivity demonstration, but no, I can click the counter and it goes, and that's cool.
Do you want to explain the difference between those?
So at least I'm pretty sure that's how. Let's double check and look at the code. Yes, so stream rendering is set to true. So what is stream rendering? Stream rendering is Blazor takes over for you an idea that, well, I mean, it assists you with an idea we have in web programming where maybe I want to get the look and feel of the page up immediately. And I know that one of the things I do is I go to some service to get the data. This could be the headlines for a news app or the post images for a blog post or anything like that. I don't, it's not a statically generated application, but I want to get that frame, that look and feel. I want to get it up as fast as I can. And so what do we often do is let's say we're just in the plain old JavaScript world, or you're using a different framework, is we go ahead and send down those static look and feel. And then we go and make a fetch call, get what we want, and then render it afterwards. Well, what Blazor now supports out of the box and assists you with is just by turning on the stream rendering attribute, setting it to true in a component. Now I can write code that looks like this. I can build my weather component, which essentially says I'm going to create a table, and I'm going to put in the date, the temperatures, and the summary that come from this model. Basically enumerate through all the forecasts that I have in this little weather forecast structure, this array, and I'm going to render them. Okay, awesome. But how do I get those? Where's the code here that fetches it? Well, that code is down here, although let's acknowledge that for purposes of this demonstration and this file new project, this does not actually call anything. It simulates it by putting in a delay. Let's just pretend this is the HTTP GET call.
Yep.
And then it generates some random data. And most importantly, the forecasts array that we were just talking about a second ago, that forecasts array is filled with these pretend forecasts. Well, I don't see anywhere in this code, like, where is it rendering this? When does that happen? And so when you look up here, the secret is the Razor syntax's ability to if else. So what it's doing is it's coming in here and it's saying, well, if forecast is null, then let's show our temporary look and feel, which here is just some HTML that says loading.
Okay.
And once forecast is no longer null, then we will show this look and feel. But what's happening behind... Yeah, go ahead.
Did we get, and it may have just happened quickly because it's only a half a second delay on that, but did we get that loading ...
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to set it to 5 seconds. So now we can't miss it. Is because it does happen quick, just like you said in the standard version. It looks like a browser's already running. Okay, you're right. So let's launch it again. And here we go. So this time we're going to the weather page, which we know has stream rendering on. And that loading is just sitting there. But it's going to take 5 seconds now. And then there it is. There's the update.
Nice.
Now, some people might ask, I did this before in Blazor. Like, I used to do this. I used to if else. I don't understand what you're talking about. What do you mean streaming rendering? Now, this is where we're going to go off the board a little bit and see if we can show what's happening, because the difference is in Blazor previously, you managed filling up, different parts of your model, and then that if else would go ahead and jump in, but it wasn't doing it. I don't believe it was doing it this way, where if we look at network, let's see what we can find here. Let's restart this. And okay, so it was hard to see what popped in. Was it this that popped in? No, that was the request for weather. The favicon came in. Let's look at that again. I'm gonna have to watch it again. So let's disable cache, reload it. We've got no blocked request. The favicon came in at the end, but I wish that we could spot this stuff coming in, and it's just so hard to do. At least for me, it is. It's not a WebSocket. It's not through WASM. Is it a fetch request? Am I going to see it as a fetch request? No, I'm not seeing it. I was hoping that we could show the stream rendering stuff kicking in, and I'm actually just not sure how to show that off yet. Because the thing that stream rendering is enabling is that it's taking care of I think part of what's happening here is that previously all Blazor apps were interactive apps. Okay. All of them.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you were making the deliberate choice of Blazor WebAssembly or Blazor Server. All Blazor apps were interactive apps. Now you have the option to turn that off completely and be a fully server-side rendered app. And that's really subtle, because you say like, well, I don't understand what the difference is. Well, the difference is in a fully server-side render app, you drop off the HTML and CSS, and then that's it. That's it. It's over. You don't get another bite at that apple.
Yeah.
And so stream rendering allows you to say, I still want server-side rendering, but I want the ability to fetch the outcome of some kind of call on the back end, and then I want to go ahead and plug that in just the way the React DOM does or any other framework does. What's difficult sometimes is I would like to figure out like how to really show and demonstrate what's happening in the developer portal, in the in the developer tools in a browser, because I think that would help drive the point home for all of us a little bit more.
Definitely. So
yeah.
So it is an either or then if we say streaming rendering true versus render mode server.
I think what we're getting at is, I think that's an interesting point. Like, what happens if I disable this? Oh, I guess I can't disable it that easily. I don't remember how to disable. Let's see. Do you know? Oh, it does. Cool. Thank you. So Control KC knew.
There you go.
How to do that. So Control KC is a pretty common way to comment lines of code. And let's run this again. Oh, I keep forgetting I've got this other browser running. So let's do that again. And let's look at what happens with weather now. I just want to see if we look at it. Well, for one thing, it's not opening.
Oh wow!
I can open counter, and I get this interactivity. But when I click weather, nothing happens.
Huh?
Yeah, it doesn't like that at all. And now I'd be curious what's actually going on. Am I getting anything? I'm not. So I got nothing. By taking out streaming rendering now, this component doesn't work. And I kind of wonder, what if we kind of just took all this and got rid of it just for now. And said, and we'll still see this component demonstrate showing data from the server. Let's see now. Is that I need to close the app just because Visual Studio Code seems to be complaining when I don't do that. Okay, so here we go. New app. Can still go to counter because, and I'll go look at the code real quick, because counter specifically says that it's render mode auto.
Okay.
This just continues working along as it always has.
Right.
But if I open weather, see, look at that. It's still not loading. That'll be something interesting to look into because I don't recall home. Let's go take a look at the home code.
Yeah.
Home doesn't have anything here, right?
True.
But it works fine. So weather is getting hung up. Let's see, does home have a page title? It does. Weather is getting hung up and not. I wonder if it's getting stuck in there. Oh, are we not waiting long enough because of the await task delay? Am I being impatient? Is that what this is really going on here?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't think so. You'd expect when you click the link to something to at least.
You feel like it should have still popped up. Yeah, I hear you. So, but now I want to see. Oh gosh, that's a little annoying. That I keep forgetting to close the window, and at least Visual Studio Code tells me. Okay, so I think what was happening there is with streaming rendering off, I'm clicking this and I'm getting frustrated that it's not showing me data right away, but it was in the middle of that await task delay, I think.
Oh, okay. So, but it was doing that all on the server. It never sent down the loading bit to let you know something is happening.
I'm going to try this again. I'm going to click this again just to change the page, and then I'm going to click weather. No, it didn't. I didn't hit this breakpoint, which I was hoping I would. I was hoping I'd hit that breakpoint there.
Is there a breakpoint?
Yeah, there is, but see how it's not lit up?
Yeah.
Let's try putting a breakpoint in again and see. Oh gosh, that's a little annoying. So that breakpoint doesn't light up. That's very interesting. And if I click weather, then yes, because I have a very short delay. So now I'm going to make that delay longer again. Oops. I did close the browser that time. Counter, I have home, I have weather, and then I clicked weather. I clicked it. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. Nice. So that's interesting. So now what I'm going to do is let's take this out. Let's take this out. Control. So now I have this if-else code is back in play.
Yeah.
And we will close this down. But what is not back in play is the stream rendering stuff. And we will click weather, and I've got to wait 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, and then we never got loading. At least we didn't see it very quickly. And then we got the component, but not the best experience. And we do have a greeting from Off the Rails Gaming. Glad to see you streaming again. Missed the Wednesday night time slot. You know what? I do too. No doubt about it. I happen to have hockey practice on Wednesday nights this year. So.
Oh no, that would have really put a nail.
Not for me, anyways. It's my daughter's hockey practice, but I am on the ice. So I somehow found my way back onto the ice and working with goalies again, which is kind of nice.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah. I've got both coaches that are just excited to be like, "Oh, you've played before," and they're like really excited about that. So that's interesting. Okay, all we've really done now is turn off stream rendering, and in order to make sure we can see the delay, I'm going to drop this down to 3 seconds.
Okay.
But again, Off the Rails Gaming, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really glad that you said hi. Really, really appreciate that. But let's turn back on stream rendering.
Yeah.
So I guess we're kind of getting the point here is of why we want this.
Mm-hmm.
Is stream rendering enables the look where we can just use plain looking code that says, show this if you're in this situation and show this if you're in that situation. And that's how we can get it without having to jump through the hoops of having an event that you're paying attention to and maybe having something in your ready, whether you're, I like writing a JavaScript ready function, or in the old days, jQuery's ready function, or whatever you're doing today in any framework that you're using. I get to have this kind of straightforward looking experience of mentally. My mental model is like, well, if I don't have any forecasts yet, do this. And if I do have forecasts, then it should look this way. And Blazor just takes care of that. That's kind of neat. But let's go ahead with stream renderings back on. Of course, I didn't turn this off. So now we'll launch it again. And I'm going to click weather, and this time a 3-second delay. So we already are seeing elements, the little loading. And then when the data came back from its call, there it is.
Yep.
So stream rendering got us that experience that we kind of like, of like, hey, here's how I want the page to look. I want to show you that as soon as possible, and then we'll go fill it out. You could use whatever you wanted. You don't have to use, a little loading. It doesn't have to be that simple. This could be whatever you want.
Right. So whatever's in that section will basically get dropped in there. So
I wonder what happens if I set this to false. Is it like not having the attribute at all? And it might not be. That might be fine. So let's go run it and click weather. And yes, I'm sitting here waiting. 1001, 1002, 1003. There it is.
Dropped right to the data. Yeah,
dropped right through. Okay, well, now we know. So the weather component has an attribute stream rendering on it, and we've also looked at home, which had nothing, but it doesn't have any kind of logic to it at all. And then counter, if I head to the counter component, we're seeing that it's render mode auto. So
yeah. Okay. And I guess if you had interactivity like the counter sitting in the weather page, could you have both attributes? Or would you split that functionality out into a separate control, because this control that's just showing me data, behaves differently than the other one? But I mean, that data that comes down could have some interactivity in it. And hey, I want to edit data that's on that grid or whatever that comes through.
Yeah, that's a good question. Can I do this? I think
you need to put the trailing tag, right?
Do I have to
slash at the end?
Okay. Is that enough? Is that enough to get a counter on here?
Doesn't the counter need the parameter?
I don't know that we've added a parameter. I think that you can add a parameter.
Okay.
We're going to find out. Okay, so here we go. This still worked.
Yeah.
And the interactivity still works.
Sure.
But
the interactivity is coming from the counter, not the weather page.
That's right. The interactivity didn't come from the weather page. I agree with you. I agree with you on that. That I believe in this particular case, it was just like, well, you already said render mode auto.
Right.
So
for that piece.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. What I find interesting now is watch a little bit of infighting that happens. And I thought this would happen. The weather component has a page title control that sets the HTML title to weather, but so does the counter, right?
Okay.
And so what we could do is we could break this out into a counter page and then a counter component. We could break it out. That might be interesting to try. And so the second one ended up winning. So here it says home when I go to home, and then when I go to counter, it says counter, and when I go to weather, it says counter. So counter won that battle, and I think probably because its page title code got rendered second, is my guess. Okay. I guess I don't know for sure, but wouldn't it be interesting now to say, well, let's take a look at what got rendered here. Yeah, it looks like this won, and title got rendered just fine.
Do you think it's because we put the counter element below the page or the page title element on weather? I mean, is it really top down like that?
I don't know. I mean, are you saying that like if we moved this here or moved it above it?
Above, like to yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, hang on. That's counter H1.
Oh, you're right. I'm on the wrong page. Yeah, I really wanted this page.
Yes.
And I want to move this up. Oops. Moving this line of code around was courtesy Alt up and down, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody knew that.
That's a fun tip.
Works in Visual Studio as well.
Yeah.
Maybe other editors. Okay, so fired up. We're going to go to weather. And Counter still is our leader in the clubhouse here, so to speak. And the interactivity works. The stream rendering still worked, but we kind of lost that. I don't know. Is it that difficult to change this? I don't know. Let's see. What would we do? We would say, first of all, we would say counter razor. See, this doesn't change. I don't believe this changes. In fact, because it's in a separate project, I think I can leave it alone completely. And I wonder, no, because see, I wonder if I just get rid of this. Actually, let me copy it. Like, why can't I just get rid of this? And now this is more of a component than it is a page, even though it's in the pages folder. And then I would just go move this here. So that way, I think, that way now the page title
on its own.
Is on its own, right? And maybe if I was really coding this up, I would have counter page, or maybe it would be fine. Maybe the namespacing works out because it's in a separate folder, and all that namespacing I think is managed by Blazor, although I'm not 100% sure. And then theoretically, I could rename this folder to components, and then I would have to change that to components. But I wonder, because that's something that, while the counter is a cool sample, I think it doesn't lead you towards the idea of, well, now hold on a second, have a counter page that includes the counter component.
Right.
It doesn't lead you that way. And in fact, when we do the DevTalkShow website, we're going to want a component that knows how to reach out to YouTube. And then that actually may have a component in it that knows how to render the individual responses back from the thing that knows how to reach out to YouTube for a list of videos.
Right.
Because I wouldn't necessarily want it to basically say, like, well, I know how to reach out to YouTube and I know how to render. I want something that knows how to render that page. And that I think will illustrate a little bit more, where sometimes this sample, maybe we lose that a little bit. So for one thing, let's see, I'm not seeing any difference. It still says counter up here. And I'm not sure why that is. So, because I thought I made some changes.
Are we modifying the right set of pages, right? Because we've got two projects.
You're right. So let's take a look again. We've got counter.razor in the server side, which has a page title of counter now.
Okay.
We have on the client side counter.razor that I thought would now just be the component and does not modify the title at all.
Makes sense.
And I kind of thought that was the way to do it. We had a question. We had a good question in the chat here. Can you render a Blazor component server side and return as a string of HTML to an endpoint without using the page directive? This is a great question. And I think this is something I did want to dig into, but we only have a few minutes left before morning stand-up. So we may just do this on a future show, but we can still answer the question, which is going to be going to the documentation. Let's see. The blog post, ASP.NET Core in Update 8, always has a what's new, which is going to take me to the docs. There is a feature now in ASP.NET Core 8 that I think is really interesting. And it's rendering a component just in code. Like, it's because it is server-side rendered now, you can write an arbitrary application and render a Blazor component.
Yeah, you could do a console app and render it, right?
It could be a console app, which I think is really interesting. And the question now is, how? First, I need to switch to the 8 documentation, and then can I find it? Is it in advanced? Is it in advanced, or should I just search for it and hope to find it? Request decompression, fundamentals. Okay, let's try server side rendering. Maybe it's in here. if it's because we've looked at this.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in this. So the answer is that yes, they have a sample in the documentation where they basically write a console app, they initialize a Blazor component, a Razor component, and they just render it out to a string. And the scenario that they know they are enabling here is static page generation, among other scenarios. But let's see. Use routable components in a Razor Pages app. Use routable components in an MVC app. Render components from a Razor view. I feel like there is something that talks about rendering dynamically rendered components. This isn't what I'm thinking of. Is it? No. But like I said, I know this is what's really frustrating is that I remember we stumbled across this one day. Is it in Blazor Hybrid? Oh, hold on.
Oh, why does that sound familiar?
Is it in the Blazor Hybrid section? Okay, so in the overall, first we got to go to 8, and then we got to go to Blazor Hybrid. So I'm in the 8 preview, and then I say Blazor Hybrid, and in here we have Windows Forms. Maybe is that close enough? I think the thing is that Windows Forms now has a view. It has a Blazor web view, so that's not quite what I'm looking for. Yeah. I really just want it to be. I just want static files. No, this isn't it. Let's try reuse Razor components again. Project code organization. No. I know we saw it. And I was like, super excited about what that meant. Is this it here? No. How about we try render Razor component? Let's say render Blazor in a console app and just see render Razor components outside of ASP.NET Core. Maybe this is what I was looking for. So in the documentation, we are in the ASP.NET Core 8 preview docs, and we're down in the Blazor section, components, and then render Razor components outside of ASP.NET Core. I think this is what we're looking for. In fact, I'm confident this is it because they create a console app. So let's head out to the console. I don't know that I can do this super quickly, but we're going to try.
Got 4 minutes.
We got 4 minutes. So we're going to make a new console app. Done. Then let's go into it. Done. And then we got to add a couple packages. Again, this RC came out yesterday, so wouldn't that be something if hopefully this all works? Okay, it's not complaining yet. In the project file, we've got to change to use the Razor SDK. Okay, fine. So we're gonna let's open this up in Visual Studio Code now. I don't want you. We're gonna say code dot just so we can get in here. We're gonna open the CS proj, and they're saying you got to change this to be Microsoft.NET SDK.Razor. Gives you the support you need. Okay. Then add the following render message component to the project. So that means we need a new file, and it was called render message.razor.
Sounds right.
I didn't spell razor right. Render message dot. I still didn't spell razor right. Okay. And we need the component, and this is like the world's simplest component. It does take a string so that it renders what you want, and then we say we're going to update the program file. Now, I don't think we're going to really take a hard look at what this program file does, just in the interest of time. But as you can see, changed it a little bit. So, is that it? Is that everything? I think so. All right. So now we've got a console app. Here's a console app that apparently it looks like you can pass a message in, and then it's just going to render that message in between. It's going to put out an H1, and then it's going to put it in a paragraph tag, and programs doing a bunch of stuff using an HTML renderer. I'm sure that is all super useful. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a launch JSON. And awesome that it's, I actually don't care about that. Why don't we just run it?
Yeah, do .NET
Why don't
run.
we just come out here and do .NET run? .NET run. And look at that. Now I got a warning from my build. It complained about something. I don't really care.
Non-null value.
The fact of the matter is that was build. That was the build that did this. But if I .NET run, it does exactly what we want, which is it rendered to a string the output from the Blazor component.
Yeah.
And I think that this is exactly what you're talking about. This is I wonder how you would say that name. Is it like a function 1999? Is that what that's supposed to be? That's a cool little handle there, though. The reason I'm asking is I'm thinking about combining HTMX with Blazor server rendering, server-side rendering. Well, here you go.
Yeah.
You can arbitrarily render a Blazor component. So that's something I did want to get to, and it wasn't planned to be part of today, but here it is. It works.
Yeah. And that's 3 minutes.
That's perfect timing because it's almost 9 o'clock, and we know what that means.
Yeah.
It's almost 9 o'clock, which means just like Off the Rails Gaming says, we got to get to our own stand-ups. So thanks for joining us. We took a look at the Blazor RC1, pretty blind. We're able to get it working, able to get things running. We learned a little bit about what some of these attributes do, what they don't do by commenting things out and playing with them. And as a bonus, we rendered a Blazor component from a console app, which is something I am pretty excited about as well. So thanks for joining us. If you watched us on YouTube, if you can hit that like, if you subscribe to us, you'll know when we go live. We're going live in mornings. And leave comments with any of your experiences. If you play with this stuff and you learn something, let us know. But thanks for joining us on Twitch, on YouTube. Rich, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Chris.
And we will see you all. Yeah, we'll see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.